of knowing. I mean, Congress could pass a completely different law on this topic, which would change her answer. So justices across the board in the confirmation hearings do not go there in their answers. And I think that's the right thing to do.
All right. Well, Dina Sayegh-Dahl, thank you so much for being with me tonight. Truly appreciate it. I'm Michael Ayala. It's been a pleasure being with you. Coming up next, closing arguments with Vinnie Politan.
Evaluate your jewelry to help you understand what it's actually worth. Then they auction it to their network of professional buyers. Get more for your jewelry with Worthy.com.
In Oakland County, Michigan, the parents of the Oxford school shooter have been accused in the deaths of the students killed by their son. Prosecutors say the shooter is enjoying the fame and they will not use his name in court.
He knows that he's going to have people who admire him and people who hate him alike, and he wants that notoriety.
In Pasco County, Florida, heartbreak in the courtroom as the family of a 75-year-old Vietnam vet give their victim impact statements in the thrill-kill murder trial. Tonight, we remember the victim.
May you find in some small measure insight as to what pain you have caused.
On the docket tonight in Las Vegas, Nevada, former Playboy and Maxim model Kelsey Turner is awaiting trial for murder. The victim? The wealthy psychiatrist who gave her hundreds of thousands of dollars.
He says, seems that Kelsey's having some trouble with her boyfriend and she has no money, nowhere to go.
Plus, officers in San Diego executing an eviction notice are confronted by a woman with a large knife who stabs one of the officers. The woman is then fatally shot. And now, a Yale professor is questioning the response of officers. Tonight's 13th juror question: were the actions of these officers reasonable under these circumstances? Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of closing arguments starts right now.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And you know, in our society today, there are a lot of people who are seeking fame, especially young people. And I'm not saying that it is something bad. I can't say it's something bad, right? I'm someone who spends my hour after hour on television, on radio for years and years and years. So I kind of get it. I kind of understand it. And in the world we live in today with social media and TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, I mean, there are people that are getting very famous from coast to coast and around the world. And at a very young age, it is happening. Now, translate that to the world that we talk about every night here on Closing Arguments, the world of true crime, where when you talk about fame, unfortunately, it's usually the killers who get most famous. I mean, take for instance, the most famous serial killer of all time, Ted Bundy, right? This guy, unfortunately, is iconic. You say his name, people know who he is, they know what he's done, and he is famous. He's really infamous, right? More so than famous, but fame came to him because of what he did, which was killing people, taking the lives of people. But for Ted Bundy, it took some time to gain that fame because as a serial killer, he'd kill someone, he'd kill someone else, and he was getting away with it. It wasn't until he got caught that then he began to get famous. Again, going back to this world of true crime, the killers who get famous instantly are really the mass killers, the mass shooters, and we see tons of them in schools, like in the Parkland school shooting. This guy got very famous very quickly, and the reason is because when something happens like that, when you have a young person who acts out and takes the lives of classmates, and everyone has one question: why? Why would they do it? And then members of the media, like me and others, dig into the lives of these killers, and then they become famous or infamous because we find out every fact trying to answer that question, why? But I want you to think about this. What if the answer to that question as to why they did it is for the fame itself? That's the case with the Oxford school shooter who was seeking fame. The Oxford school shooter in Michigan is enjoying all of this notoriety. And he got it all because of what he did inside that school that day. And I'm saying he did it because they're alleging, legal insanity. They're not saying he didn't do it. They're saying he was mentally ill at the time that he did do it, that he was legally insane. But the answer to that question, why, what motivated him, was the fame itself. And as a result of that, in the trial of his parents, who've also been accused in the deaths of those people inside the school, they've been implicated, they have their own case in that case, prosecutors, because they know that the Oxford school shooter is loving the attention, loving the notoriety, loving the fame, they're refusing, absolutely refusing to use his name inside the courtroom in the trial of the Oxford school shooter's parents. Now, for those of you who don't know their story, take a listen.
The deputies took a suspect into custody within 5 minutes of the original 911 call. They recovered a handgun from the suspect. The suspect fired multiple shots. There's multiple victims.
I was basically in the fetal position, shaking, because I was scared. It was very scary, but like I was trying, like we were trying not to panic.
It's just crazy because like people always say like it's never going to happen to them, and the fact that it happened to two people that I really care about, like it's just really hard.
15-year-old Ethan Crumbly accused of shooting and killing 4 classmates and injuring 7 others at Oxford High School.
While the shooter was the one who entered the high school and pulled the trigger, there are other individuals who contributed to the events on November 30th, and it's my intention to hold them accountable as well. Based on the information and evidence I have received, today I am announcing charges against the shooter's parents, Jennifer and James Crumbly.
We have, in fact, taken into custody without incident James and Jennifer Crumbly, the fugitives involved in the Oxford incident.
In Ethan's journal, which was provided in discovery, he explicitly states, and I quote, that he has to find where his dad hid the firearm.
The evidence will show that Ethan Crumbly was gravely troubled. He was fascinated with firearms. He was violent. He displayed terrifying tendencies and behaviors, and he literally sketched out what he had planned to do in his journal and his drawings. It was a negligence on the part of these defendants and their failure to perform the duties of their parents far perceived November the 30th.
Okay, let's get back now to this whole issue of their son, right? His name, his fame. Take a listen to what the prosecutor said in court about all of that.
We're not going to give him the fame that he sought, and we're certainly not going to contribute to any potential shooter in the future.
And I get it, and I get it. And here's the real headline to all of this, is that the judge agrees. The judge agrees. The name of the Oxford school shooter will not be permitted in the trial of his parents. Did you hear me? This is extremely unusual, but I understand it. The judge will not permit the name of the Oxford school shooter to be used in the trial of his parents. Let's get back to the why of it, because there is a backstory to all this. I'm going to show you a clip from a hearing for the Oxford school shooter himself, the student, their son. Take a listen.
And his behaviors since his incarceration have not changed. They've continued to demonstrate that he hasn't altered his way of thinking. His request on December 17th, you'll see in the exhibits from the jail, his request that how do I get my fan mail, my hate mail, and my commissary? He knows that he's going to have people who admire him and people who hate him alike, and he wants that notoriety. He also takes time to mention to some of his fans out there, my next court date is February 22nd. Maybe you can watch it on TV. This is what he wants. He wants to be noticed. He wants us to relish in his behaviors. And if he is given the opportunity to converse one-on-one with little to no supervision, because we won't have these in writing, when he's at Children's Village, when he's talking to another juvenile in the corner of the gym, when he's talking with them at the lunch table. And that should scare all of us, and I know it scares me.
So he's going to have his own trial. Tonight we're talking about the trial of his parents, where because of what you just heard, his name will not be permitted to be used in that trial. Let's talk about this. Let's bring in a think tank. Joining us tonight in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney Eklund Mercy. In Los Angeles, California, former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. And in Phoenix, Arizona, the attorney who represented Jodi Arias and the author of the book series, Trapped with Ms. Arias. Please check it out. Kirk Nurmi is with us. Great to see everyone. Eklund Mercy, you've got a trial of a mother and father who've been implicated for the shootings that were done by their son, yet their son's name cannot be used in their trial. You can refer to him as the shooter if you want.
I can't, like, especially when the reason why they have the charges is because of the son. We need the son's name. The jury should be privy to all the information so their attorneys can provide a competent and zealous defense. Unfortunately, although, yes, we can't, it's kind of ironic that they're trying to really control the outcome. However, they're also basically trying to ask the parents to control the outcome of their son. Parents don't know. Unfortunately, we have, as a defense attorney, I have seen parents who have no idea what their children are up to, who have no idea what type of psychological issues that they're going through, and would not even be able to understand or really just anticipate a murder or a shooting or things like that. So to put all that burden on parents to just know what your children is thinking and what they're capable of at all times, I think it's unfair. I really do. And I think that if they're going to proceed with, charges, that the parents be able to provide a competent and zealous defense, and not being able to mention the name is a problem.
Nima Rahmani, the obvious place for these parents to point the finger is at their own son. Can't say his name, though.
Vinnie, brace yourself, because I agree with Eklund. I understand the public policy reasons. The district attorney, state attorney is not naming Ethan Crumbley. They don't want to give him notoriety. And frankly, they want the case to be about the parents, right? They don't want them pointing the finger at someone else, someone more culpable, someone who actually pulled the trigger. But this is fundamental to their defense. They're obviously going to blame one another. That's why they got a separate counsel appointed. That should have happened weeks ago, if not months ago. But they should absolutely be able to blame their son. This is a case that will
Well, they could blame him.
litigated.
They could just call him son. They could call him shooter. They can call him killer.
But there's no legal basis not to name the most obvious person who killed these individuals. But don't get me wrong, the parents are responsible. They should be prosecuted. But Vinnie, you and I know that this case is going to go up on appeal. The Second Amendment folks, the gun lobby, they're going to litigate the whole way. This may end up before the Supreme Court. This is a case of novel law. We're going to make law here. And to create another appellate issue unnecessarily, I don't agree with what the trial judge did here. Eklund, you're right.
Whoa, Kirk Nurmi.
Well, how can I follow Nima agreeing with Eklund? But yeah, ultimately they're both right, because the Sixth Amendment right is an individual right. It's owned by each and every one of individuals. It's not affected by any relative of yours and what they may or may not be seeking at trial. So if it infringes upon the Sixth Amendment right, you are going to have an appellate issue. I can envision a scenario when you're talking about selecting a jury and you have to say their son and you don't mention the name. What about if these parents want to testify at trial and the theory is that they're disconnected from their son? So instead of lovingly refer to him by his name, they're forced to say our son or something generic or the shooter or what have you. So there is no legal reasoning behind this. I certainly understand what you laid out and some of the reasons why we want to prevent people from seeking fame and committing these type of crimes. But now that we're here, the Sixth Amendment attaches to both these parents, and they should be able to actualize their rights fully. And any restrictions on that, to me, seem ripe, as Nima said, for appellate issue should there be a conviction in this case.
All right, folks, we are continuing to track this story, this trial as it moves forward. It's, again, as everyone here on the think tank is talking about tonight, there are a lot of issues here. It's a novel case. We've never seen anything like it before, and I've never seen a ruling like this ever before either. We're still waiting to get the written order from the judge on this issue. So we've got that. What we're going to do, think tank with us the whole hour. When we come back, what an emotional day inside the courtroom. Wow. The thrill kill murder trial. A 75-year-old Vietnam vet is run over and killed by this man, and he did it just for the thrill of it. But what happened today in the courtroom was, wow. Well, you'll have to see it, and we'll show it to you next.
The app today.
I just can't. I just can't. He didn't deserve this. No one did, but not him.
That's Justin Pennell. He engaged in what's called a thrill kill. where he killed someone just for the thrill of it, just to see the face of the man he was running over with his car. He randomly saw someone on the street, hung a U-turn, and killed a 75-year-old Vietnam vet. Today was his sentencing. If you don't know the backstory, here's Joy Lim Nakrin, Court TV legal correspondent with more.
At first glance, it looked like a terrible crash, a crumpled vehicle against a utility pole, and a fatality. But according to police, this was no accident.
Because of pure evil, there's a 75-year-old man who was a father, a grandfather, a Vietnam War Army veteran who was killed.
The Army vet is Michael Pratt, and he was struck while walking along this road in Pasco County, Florida. The motorist, Justin Pinal, called 911 and, according to police, admitted he intentionally hit the victim.
It was almost, for him, pleasurable.
Pinal passed the victim, but according to prosecutors, he waited till there were no vehicles or witnesses around and allegedly targeted him deliberately. Officers said Pinal told them he was traveling at a speed of 50 to 70 miles an hour when he hit the man. When police asked him why, he allegedly said he wanted to kill someone out of curiosity. And when asked how he felt about it, he said he enjoyed it.
He actually laughed to the detectives when he said, "I saw the victim, scared."
The former Army vet was declared dead by paramedics at the scene. The impact appeared to be so severe, Pinal's car stopped running and plowed into this pole.
This man is absolutely evil.
Justin Pinal isn't evil but autistic and suffers from depression and PTSD, according to his attorneys. He's agreed to a plea deal that'll mean he will spend the rest of his life in prison.
You understand what you're doing here today?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you doing here today?
I'm pleading no contest to life.
Okay.
And I retain my right to appeal.
Okay.
Emotional day today inside the courtroom. Court TV legal correspondent Julia Janae is joining us tonight. I want to begin with the victim's family. This has been extremely difficult for them. What was it like for them today inside that courtroom?
Vinnie, they brought the impact statement. They illuminated Michael Pratt, who we didn't know a lot about, really, because they've stayed in the shadows during this crime. We have his picture, 75-year-old father, grandfather, someone who they described as caring, as a great person that they loved being around, who lived by himself there in Hudson, Florida. And there were things in the sentencing hearing that I had not seen before. One being that Allison Fairweather, the daughter of Michael Pratt, she actually played voicemails that were left for her of her father. For the court, in open court, she asked the judge if it was okay, and you could hear his carefree, energetic voice, leaving her just quick messages, telling her that he loved her, and even saying, hey, I've started driving as an Uber driver, and I got my first $20 tip, and I want to share that joy with you. So it really just brought home this person, brought him to life inside of the courtroom. And here's another thing that I rarely see. She said she came in with a statement that was prepared, but because of what she heard from the defendant and his family, she seemed to change and have a change of heart in how she would react to this sentencing altogether. Take a listen.
I have some words prepared. But I want to say it to you, Mom, and you, sister, and Justin. I thank you for your condolences, and I offer you my condolences too.
I'm sorry.
It's not okay, Justin, but I don't hate you. I don't hate you. I'm working through emotions, and you're taking responsibility, and I'm happy you pled guilty, and I'm happy I didn't have to hear your 911 call and your confession, because I think I would have fixated on that for a very long time, and it would have been extremely difficult.
What grace, what compassion coming
Remarkable.
from that member of the victim's family. Unbelievable today.
I don't know where that comes from. You know, we cover so many cases, and sometimes victims' families are so incredible in the way they see things. I mean, because for viewers, you read the what people are posting and what we are thinking, and like we're angry, we're mad, but there's another level that so many of these folks have. That was amazing. Empathy. So she referenced what the defendant said and what was going on. How about the defendant and his family?
The defense had an opportunity to really paint a picture of this defendant that showed you his life. They first brought a psychiatrist to talk about the diagnosis that they wanted to get in front of the jury, but the judge didn't let that in. One of the reasons that he pleaded no contest, didn't want to go forward with the trial, that he had an autistic disorder, that he had PTSD and depression. So this psychiatrist talked about where the root of this actually exacerbating happened for him. Let's take a listen.
Starting at the end of grade school and the beginning of middle school, he started to get bullied. He would get picked on by the same group of bullies for almost 7 years. Throughout those 7 years, I went to the schools and pleaded with them to do something, and the only thing they would tell me is that their hands were tied as far as what they could do, and I couldn't do anything through the police because it was a school matter. The bullies were never spoke to or reprimanded in any way. Not when they were shooting him up with pellet guns and paintball guns. Not when he was thrown down on his face, slammed into concrete, and had his nose broken and had to take to the hospital. Absolutely nothing was done.
Mr. Pinnell reported severe bullying during high school, both within his, or during middle school especially, both within his school and in his community. And the bullying was severe enough where he had a depressive episode, as a youngster, and was admitted to the hospital, also suicidal and having, aggressive thoughts at the time. And his bullying was severe enough, I hadn't previously mentioned the PTSD diagnosis, that he remains fixated and was fixated on that bullying, years later.
First, there was the defendant's mother, Dawn Haas, and then the psychiatrist who the defense had testify. This sentencing shedding light on so many issues: mental health, bullying, the lack of resources that his mother said that she had trying to get him help for all of those years. She said he was picked on by the same group for 7 years, and even though the bullying was over, that his mind couldn't let go of the problem, and those bullies were actually on his hit list of people he wanted to kill after killing this victim.
It's tragic on every single level, and it starts with the 75-year-old man, survived the Vietnam War, for goodness sake, came back, is Uber driving. But he raised, you see his daughter in court, and she's amazing, so we know that he was amazing. And tough life for the defendant, and it's not going to get any easier. Julie Janae, thank you so much. Let's bring back in our think tank. Still with us, Eklund Mercy, Nima Rahmani, and Kirk Nurmi. Nima, your thoughts tonight on this? There's a lot to it here. It's not always so simple and clean cut.
It's not, and I think this is a case where Eklund and I may agree again. So it's just one of those nights that this is a mental health issue. And here's someone who's severely ill, who's severely sick. That does not excuse his behavior. He absolutely should spend the rest of his life in prison. And I would never, ever commend a murderer. But there's a reason, Vinnie, we see so many murder trials here on Court TV, because I don't give any discounts. And in Florida, if you are convicted of first-degree murder, you're going to serve life in prison. So the vast majority of criminal defendants, they would not have pled, because take your chances at trial. Maybe you get one or two jurors and hang the panel. He did the right thing. So I commend him for not putting the victim's family through an unnecessary trial. So good for him. Don't really know what the no contest part of it does, because I doubt he's going to have any assets in a civil lawsuit. But for me, that's the same as pleading guilty. So for once, I'm going to give credit to a defendant, and hopefully, talked about public policy, we can do things in Florida and throughout this country to prevent tragedies like this from happening again.
Kirk Nurmi, I know you've seen a lot in your days inside the courtroom with different types of defendants. Your thoughts about what happened in that courtroom today?
Yeah, anybody who's done criminal defense work for a number of years will see so much that there's untreated mental illness that is manifesting itself into crimes in the courtroom. And this is just another example of that. We heard Mr. Pinnell's mom talk about the bullying, talk about the quest for resources, talk about the help. We heard experts talk about this homicidal ideation he had, but yet there was nothing in place, nowhere she could take him to stop this from happening. We just talked about Crumbly earlier. Was there a place where he really could have been taken to stop this tragedy? And that is, it really goes beyond criminal justice, as Julia mentioned, mental health resources, things of that nature. So if we want to get serious about these things, we have to get mental health intervention before they wind up in a courtroom in a sentencing situation like this.
Eklund, I'll give you the final word on this.
I have had the song Jeremy by Pearl Jam just playing in my head the whole time. It just seems like bullying has been a consistent underlier for Ethan Crumbly as well as Pinnell. So I really think that this should show that we should change some things with regards to schools and with regards to bullying, that it does manifest. We know what kind of starts it. We've seen a lot of the school shooters really start with aggressive bullying. However, the schools not doing anything really just exacerbates it. So I think that this case, as well as Crumbly's case, should really just be just a glaring red flag to school officials as well as politicians as well as lawmakers to really look at how we're dealing with bullying in the schools, how we are dealing with helping the parents deal with with the request for help to protect their children, because we do not want to end up here.
Yeah, I'll take it one step further. I think there is something that parents need to do as well. Like, we understand the position that parents of victims of bullying are in, but those bullies have parents too. And there's a level of responsibility that I think we all have as parents to make sure and keep an eye on our kids and understand what they are doing and whether or not they are part of the problem, and be able to admit it when it is in fact happening. All right, stand tight. We got a lot more to get to tonight, still ahead. On the docket tonight in Las Vegas, Nevada, former Playboy and Maxim model Kelsey Turner is awaiting trial for murder. The victim, the wealthy psychiatrist who gave her hundreds of thousands of dollars.
He says, seems that Kelsey's having some trouble with her boyfriend and she has no money, nowhere to go.
Plus, officers in San Diego executing an eviction notice are confronted by a woman with a large knife who stabs one of the officers. The woman is then fatally shot. And now, a Yale professor is questioning the response of officers. Tonight's 13th Juror question: were the actions of these officers reasonable under these circumstances? On the docket tonight, Kelsey Turner, former Playboy and Maxim model, accused of murder out in Las Vegas. Ted Rollins has the story.
Renowned psychiatrist Dr. Thomas Burchard had been missing for 3 days when his body was found in the trunk of an abandoned BMW in the desert outside of Las Vegas. Judy Earp, his girlfriend of 17 years, was back at their home in California and sensed the doctor was in trouble.
I told him repeatedly that these are not, the kind of people you want to be associating with.
Judy was worried about this woman, 25-year-old Playboy and Maxim model Kelsey Turner. Judy says Kelsey was extorting money from Dr. Burchard.
About $300,000 that I know about, and possibly more.
Burchard had a history of helping others and engaging with young, attractive girls he met online, like Kelsey. That's according to his friend, who did not want to be identified when he was interviewed by KSBW.
These women were just like an escape for him to have somewhere to go. He told me he met Kelsey on the website and met up with her, and they talked, and they went and had dinner a few times.
Dr. Burchard's friend says the psychiatrist started spending time and money on Kelsey, even renting this condo in Salinas, California for Kelsey and her mother to live along with Kelsey's child. Even after Dr. Burchard stopped paying the rent and Kelsey moved to Vegas, the two did keep in contact. And shortly before the murder, Kelsey reached out to the doctor, according to his friend.
He says, seems that Kelsey's having some trouble with her boyfriend out there in Vegas. He's hitting her, he's abusing her, and she has no money, nowhere to go. And I feel partly responsible for this.
Court documents show that Kelsey Turner was, in fact, reported as the victim in a domestic violence case less than a month before the doctor's murder. Dr. Burchard went to Vegas to see Kelsey, calling his girlfriend Judy only after he had arrived, saying he was spending the weekend and would be back on Monday.
I warned him on Saturday when he was there that, maybe you ought not wait till Monday to come home. Maybe you ought to just come home on the next flight.
After missing his flight and not responding to calls and texts, Judy called Las Vegas police. Dr. Burchard's body was found near Lake Mead, about 25 miles outside Vegas.
The actual incident occurred at a residence in the Las Vegas Valley, and then the body was found out by the lake.
This is the Las Vegas home where Kelsey and her boyfriend John Kennison were living and where investigators believe Dr. Burchard was murdered. Kelsey's roommate, Diana Pena, told a grand jury that Kennison attacked Dr. Burchard with a baseball bat and that after the initial attack, Kelsey insisted that her boyfriend knock him out. Pena also testified that the attack left Kennison covered in blood. According to arrest warrants, police recovered a bag from the Rio Hotel. It's where prosecutors say Turner, Kennison, and Pena fled to after the murder. Inside that bag, investigators found sheets of paper ripped from Dr. Burchard's notebook that contained his banking information and passwords.
Additional information has come to light.
Kelsey Turner was arrested in California 3 weeks after police recovered Burchard's body. Her extradition was delayed after it was determined that she was pregnant. She has since given birth to a girl while in custody. Her boyfriend, John Kennison, was arrested a few weeks later in Las Vegas. Both are facing murder charges. Kelsey's roommate, Diana Pena, pleaded guilty to accessory to murder and is expected to testify at their trials.
All right, folks, we've got a calendar call on the 17th of June, and then, yes, finally a trial date. Nevada versus Kelsey Turner, June 27th, 2022. And, of course, we will stay on top of it for you, folks. When we come back, some body cam footage out of San Diego. Officers executing an eviction notice come across the woman inside, and she's got a large knife and she won't put it down. They end up shooting her after she stabs one of the officers. And now there's a Yale professor who has questioned the operations of the officers at the scene. So we'll get your reaction and our think tank's reaction next.
9.
Hi.
What is it?
Are you Yanli?
Yes.
Okay, here's a notice to evict. Okay?
What?
It's your notice for. You put the knife down right now, or I'm gonna. Put your knife down. Put the knife down.
You put
the knife down right now. Put the knife down right now.
How do I know you are not intruder?
Ma'am, drop the knife.
You have not even shown your badge.
Don't-
And you're poor guy.
Just drop the knife.
Where is the badge?
Drop the knife, please. Don't make me do this.
No, I'm not dropping.
Drop
Where is the badge?
the knife now.
Hey, that is a fake police officer.
I am not a fake police officer. Drop the knife. Drop the. Dark. Show me your hands. Where you at? Where you at? Sheriff Department. Hands. Let me see your hands. Hands. Come on, hands up. Come on, your hands up. Back up. Back up. Back up. I got stabbed.
They were serving an eviction notice. She had a large knife, and you saw part of that video. We featured it in our Crime Time segment last week. What you didn't see there is when she first closes the door, they waited 45 minutes. They were trying to get her out. Then they had a special team that went in. Joe Ested and David Katz, two of our regular guests on Crime Time, commented on the officer's actions in this case. Take a listen.
He started the normal commands being real aggressive. Then he realized he was dealing with somebody that wasn't real stable in the mind, so he started to bring his tone down, which I applaud that because we don't see that a lot. Once the assistant units arrived, because she closed the door, went back into the apartment, this is where it went bad for me. I understand you want to use lethal force as much as you can to save a life, but this individual, this female, was posing a danger, a huge danger. She had a butcher knife. So you always want to match the threat level to what you're dealing with at the time. You're dealing with a person with a large knife. You don't want to match it with a beanbag.
And she comes out. And the 9 people all try to hurry back out of the apartment. They fall over each other. When lethal force becomes necessary, in other words, after she stabs one officer and is leaning over the officer to continue the attack, then they open up. So the officers who are engaging her with lethal force are firing at her with their co-workers on the ground within the line of fire. Poor communication, poor tactics, and that is not how you use less than lethal force.
And what was fascinating from what Joe and David Katz, Joe Ested and David Katz told us, and they're both law enforcement, former law enforcement, is they believe, the lethal force was justified, could have been used even earlier, shouldn't even tried the beanbags. Well, the woman who was shot and killed has her doctorate, and she got it at Yale. So there was a doctor, Dr. Sten Verman, the dean of the Yale School of Public Health, was giving his opinion about what happened to his former colleague. Take a listen.
It seemed reasonable to someone looking at that body cam that a response that was more mental health oriented might have been superior to one that was forceful.
A little bit of criticism for the job that law enforcement did. And it's going to be reviewed by the Citizen Board out in San Diego. But posted all of this on social media. Get your reaction. Do you think the officer's actions were reasonable under those circumstances? Lee has our 13th juror comment of the day. If she hadn't stabbed a police officer, she would not have gotten shot. She made the decision not to drop the knife and comply with orders. Had she listened and done what she was told to do, she would still be alive. And she made that call, not the officer. So let's bring back in our think tank, Eklund Mercy, Nima Rahmani, Kirk Nurmi. Eklund, your thoughts about what we just saw and what took place as they were trying to just serve an eviction notice?
It's so hard to watch because number one, you have to be aware of the climate that we're in right now. Hate crimes being committed against Asian people are on an all-time high. So you have to put that into perspective. Then you can tell that she, that English isn't her first language. So at that point, the officer should have been able to, back up for a second. There was a door between the officer and that woman. There was no reason to go in that hard. There was no reason to push through. At that point, you should have asked for help with mental health because you can tell that she was having an issue. So there were so many ways to prevent this, but how they got to killing her, I can't see. Even with the knife, I mean, Japan, we have 9 people and you cannot disarm one lady with a knife. It's a problem, and that the whole precinct should have to account for. I don't care. She only had a butcher knife. You mean to tell me 9 grown men couldn't stop it? You also had a K-9 unit. You couldn't stop it. Then we need to reevaluate. We need to retrain. Somebody needs to learn martial arts because this lethal force should not be your first choice. I'm sorry.
Well, Kirk Nurmi, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with that, Glenn. I mean, I think we could make the argument that their role there was to serve the eviction notice, and they had done that. So going back in the apartment as they did, maybe that's something that needs to be looked at. But we can't impose perfection on every situation here. And I really have to disagree with Eklund strongly, because if the police cannot respond with lethal force when they're being stabbed, when can they respond with lethal force? Nobody has to learn karate. Nobody has to do all these things. We have a person stabbing an officer. If officers are not allowed to respond with lethal force in that situation, I can't imagine any that they were.
He shouldn't have even been there to be stabbed. That's what I'm saying. At that point, hey, we have a mental health issue. Let's stop it. Let's stop. Let's go get some help. That's what I meant.
Nima, you're the closest to San Diego. Go ahead.
I used to be a prosecutor in San Diego, Vinnie, and a sheriff's deputy got stabbed. It's absolutely appropriate. And why are we getting legal advice from a Yale professor when you got a Harvard law grad on the show? That was absolute nonsense. Eklund, I knew it was too good to be true. We weren't going to agree on everything. If officers can't defend themselves when they're stabbed, you want to get a dog stabbed, you want to have someone learn martial arts or MMA. I mean, this is the perfect situation. I mean, it's absolutely justified. You get stabbed, you shoot to kill.
Eklund, you said only a butcher knife. Like that's
No, here's the thing. I do
a butcher knife. You literally said that.
I do. Yes, and I did. And I said, what I'm saying is that when you have 9 people and you have one person with only a butcher knife. So you had the man had the rifle, you had the other man with everybody else had guns, everybody else were packing.
They tried shooting her with beanbags.
Beanbag. And what I'm saying is at that point, you should know that it was a psychotic issue. It's a psychotic break. To protect yourself, you should leave the scene and get psychological help. It's at least we should train officers to be able to recognize what a psychological break is. She's being evicted, but are you making it like, for her to be at Yale, for her to have such a disconnect, for her to be in a position to be evicted from her home, something went wrong. Something went terribly wrong, and she's not doing well. So at that point, there should be something for when somebody's having a psychotic break. And we're going to see that more and more. We've seen that, especially after COVID.
Oh, we've seen it this whole hour. We've seen it the whole hour.
Yes, the whole hour.
Eklund Mercy, we're out of time. You know, you have a clock? You know we're out of time. Eklund Mercy, Nima Rahmani, Kirk Nurmi. Amazing as always. Go Crimson. We'll be right back.
Yes.
In Manchester, New Hampshire, 7-year-old Harmony Montgomery was missing for 2 years before she was reported gone. Her father, Adam, had custody and is now locked up for assault and endangering. Tonight, a new development as Adam's girlfriend has died. What did she know, and how will this impact the search for Harmony?
This is a 7-year-old girl. Let's find her.
In tonight's Unsolved Case file in Clarksville, Tennessee, pregnant mother of 2, Susan Lund, went missing in 1992. Her skull is identified in 2022 after being found in Illinois 30 years ago. Now, the question is, what happened to Susan Lund?
They feel better knowing now that their mother didn't abandon them and that she was taken.
In Los Angeles, California, officers tried to subdue a suspect with less than lethal force. But when it doesn't work, they use deadly force. We take a look at this tragic video with our own law enforcement experts.
Hey, get your beanbag. Go get your beanbag.
And in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a wild shootout caught on camera. We break down what happened during crime time. Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of Closing Arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us here on Closing Arguments. She was 7 years old. 7 years old. Harmony Montgomery. And she was born into, saying less than fortunate circumstances is putting it mildly. She was born into a very difficult situation. Her mother, fighting addiction, lost custody to her father, who had his own issues, his own problems. And while her father had custody of her, she went missing. And for 2 years, no one really knew, no one really did anything, no one looked for her. Well, now they are. Harmony Montgomery, 7 years old, last seen in 2019. Now, tonight, there are some big developments in this case and in this investigation. But first, for those of you not familiar with Harmony's story, here it is. This is little 5-year-old Harmony Montgomery clutching her doll and smiling for the camera. When you look at this picture, everything seems very normal. Harmony seems happy and cared for. But sometimes, pictures can be very deceiving because Harmony's world is anything but normal and happy. Her father has been arrested and charged with second-degree assault. The victim, his 5-year-old daughter, little Harmony. But that's not the most troubling part of Harmony's world. This picture is from 2019, and there are not any newer pictures of Harmony. The photographs of this little angel are all over 2 years old. That's because she's been missing since October or November of 2019.
Help us find this little girl. Someone knows something, do what is right, and call in. I cannot emphasize that enough. Somebody out there knows something. It's time for people to do the right thing.
According to a police affidavit, Harmony's mother, Crystal Sori, says she lost custody to Harmony's father, Adam, because she was dealing with a substance abuse problem. She says the last time she saw Harmony was a FaceTime call on Easter of 2019. Meanwhile, Harmony's father, Adam, says Crystal picked up Harmony for Thanksgiving in 2019, but Adam's girlfriend at the time says Adam told her he dropped Harmony off at Crystal's. Now, back to the assault charges. Adam's uncle claims that Adam admitted to bashing Harmony around the house and witnessing Harmony being spanked very hard, forced to stand in the corner for hours, and scrubbing the toilet with her toothbrush. So while the court system is dealing with the charges against Adam Montgomery, the chief is still looking for this beautiful little girl in the photo.
Quite frankly, enough is enough. It's a 7-year-old girl. Let's find her, all right? Let's come together as a community and do the right thing. That's all I'm asking, and I don't think I'm asking a lot. If people think that I am, then I'll leave it at that.
Now, the big news tonight involves Harmony's father's girlfriend, Kelsey Small. She has passed away. She has died. We've confirmed that. Now, Kelsey was not charged in this case, and some outlets are reporting that she actually was found dead on March 13th. Now, her name does come up in the arrest affidavit of Harmony's father. Let me read it to you. On 12/31/2021, patrol officers were able to make contact with Adam and his new girlfriend, Kelsey Small, together sleeping in a vehicle in the area of Harvell Street in Manchester. Small claimed that she had been romantically involved with Adam for over a year. Small said that she is aware that Adam has 3 children from one mother and another child from before that. However, Small said that Adam was not in touch with any child from his prior relationship. Small claimed Adam has never talked about Harmony, and she has no information on where she may be. If she did have information, she took it to the grave, literally. Let me bring in my guest tonight. Joining me in Salt Lake City, Utah, private investigator, former police officer Rob Joseph. In San Diego, California, retired director of the San Diego Police Department Crime Lab, Jennifer Shen. And in Arlington, Virginia, the adoptive father of Harmony's brother, Jameson, Blair Miller, is with us tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Blair, I'll begin with you and your thoughts and reaction to this news now that Harmony's father's girlfriend has passed away. So whatever information she may have had, we're never going to hear.
I think we're saying what a lot of people are saying, that it's tragic. You know, this morning, my husband had gotten word about it, and we talked about it, and we just kind of stopped our tracks and said, how much tragedy has to come out of this situation? And of course, we still have so many questions. And the most important question we have is, where's Harmony? And that has been our chief concern since day one. And you know, hearing these developments, of course, it raises a lot of questions, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that.
Yeah, from what you know, Blair, when we look at the timeline of Adam's, who he was spending time with, and when he was spending time with them, is it clear to you when Kelsey came into his life, and was there an intersection? I know what she told police, but was there any intersection in time, do you believe, where Harmony may have been around and Kelsey was also somehow in Adam's life?
Yeah, I don't think we know, but we really haven't been focused on too much of that when we, you know, have been kind of dissecting our own timeline over and over. You know, we just keep thinking about from our son's behalf, for Jameson, and what would he want us to be doing right now? And it's certainly bringing attention to, you know, what's happened with Harmony. Where is she? But also trying to understand, you know, how did we get to this point? And that's the most important thing for us. You know, there are a lot of details. There are a lot of questions behind the scenes. And it's easy for us to all get wrapped up on one certain aspect of things. But for us right now, still the big picture of where is Harmony, and, you know, putting her picture out there like you are right now. That's the most important thing for us.
Absolutely. Rob, you know, when I think of this case and I think of, you know, the father, Adam, I think clearly has a lot of information that he could reveal. I don't think he will. I don't think he will. That's why I thought it was so important to get information from people who were close to him. And obviously Kelsey Small was very close to him, and whether she was there at the time or there afterwards, I thought there was an opportunity that maybe she would be the one who could provide some information about what happened to Harmony and where she is.
Yeah, I know when we've talked about this case before, it was, the idea of incarceration and being able to use that as a tool to try to, push for information, either from Adam himself or from, the girlfriend or anybody else. But now, this new turn of events with her sudden death, and I understand there's no suspicious circumstances behind the death. So, we don't know if it's a drug overdose or, a death by, her own hand. But clearly, we're not any closer to finding out where Harmony is and what happened to her. And if somebody actually was a part of taking her somewhere, you would hope that these new things that are taking place, these new incidents, or the death of the girlfriend, that somebody, if in fact Harmony is with somebody else, that they would choose to come forward now.
Jen, your thoughts about what impact this could have on the investigation, and the investigation is about finding Harmony.
I agree. It's a tragedy on a lot of levels, and at this point, the best thing that you can come up with would be to get some information from someone. And certainly the girlfriend was a really potentially good source of information. If she might have known something, any kind of clue that would give us some sort of closure on this case. So with her passing, that door is closed, and that is very, very tragic. It certainly makes it more difficult to figure out where Harmony is and to bring her home.
Rob, where do you think the information comes from, right? There's always the two places, right? Some piece of physical evidence or forensic evidence in whatever form it's in, or somebody saying something because somebody knows something. What do you think would be the key here? Because this investigation didn't start until 2 years after she went missing.
Yeah, and that's the tragedy of this case, is how the state just kind of fell down and dropped the ball on this one. But I would, knowing criminals and having dealings with criminals, they tend to talk, they share information, and there's a high likelihood that that Adam's girlfriend that just passed might have taken somebody into her confidence. And now she's passed, they might be more open to come forward with information, whereas before, it's like the thieves' code. They protect each other, and now she's no longer in the picture. There is a likelihood that if she disclosed anything to anyone, that there's nothing stopping that person from coming forward and letting everybody know where Harmony is or what happened to Harmony.
Blair, any word on how Harmony's mom is doing?
I think as good as you can expect in this situation. A lot of time has passed. Yes, most of this has been reported since January, but she's been dealing with this for a long time, and so it's difficult on a lot of fronts for a lot of people right now, and just trying to. The answer is not being able to sit back and just do nothing, because that doesn't help. We all have to be doing something, and because someone out there we do believe knows something.
Jennifer, initially, when you go back in time 2 years, you go back to the scene of where Harmony was living. Adam had moved out of there, other people had moved in. What do you think about finding a piece of forensic evidence, some clue that might lead to something in this case a couple of years later? Because we know a couple of years later they went in and they were looking around.
Right, and it's just tough. It's tough, particularly when you have a potential victim that lived in that home for at least part of the time. So anything you find related to her doesn't necessarily mean anything. So what you're actually looking for is some sign of violence. Are there bloodstain patterns, either under the carpet or behind the paint on the wall? I mean, those are some things that you could look for, or you're going to have to get someone to give you some information about where evidence might be buried or hidden. It's very difficult 2 years later. And unless any interaction between Harmony and her father was very violent, there probably isn't going to be much that you can find that would point to that location as a scene of a potential murder for her.
Blair, what's your level of hope here? How optimistic are you that the answer is going to be found, that Harmony is going to be found?
Look, I mean, I think on one hand, we're trying to be, over the top, full of optimism and thinking of the most positive scenarios ahead. But as time goes on, of course, and you don't hear anything, of course, you go down a different road and you worry about things. My chief concern, my husband's chief concern is when we look at our youngest son and try to understand how is this going to impact his life. That's what we're most concerned about. We sent a letter to Adam Montgomery, in jail, just trying to, through his attorney, just asking him if he, coming from a father's standpoint, telling him, what this would mean for Jameson to get some answers, doing anything we can to make a plea for him or anyone to come forward and say something.
I presume no response, right?
Correct.
All right. Well, Blair, best to you and your family. We're all praying for that answer, and we will speak again. Rob Joseph, Jennifer Shen staying with us. When we come back, we're going to open up tonight's unsolved case file. And as the search for Harmony Montgomery continues, it doesn't matter how many years it's been, because our next story, Susan Lund, missing for 30 years, but they found her, identified her, and tonight, 30 years later, the question is, what happened to her? time to open up tonight's unsolved case file, and this one really a huge development, but there are still a lot of questions. We're talking about a 30-year-old case. Susan Lund disappeared. She had 2 young children. She was pregnant. Disappeared in 1992. Kyle Horan from our great affiliate WTVF in Nashville has the story.
The Sheriff's Office extends its sincerest condolences to the family of Susan Lund.
It's hard to believe that a situation like this could bring so much relief to a family. In 1992, on Christmas Eve, Susan Lund left her family's home in Clarksville to go to the grocery store. She was 25 years old, pregnant, and was never seen again. Lund had 3 children and a husband who just passed away about 2 years ago.
She has 3 children, so it was hard to believe some of the stories that said she ran away. We always believed that something had happened to her.
Pamela Reyes and Anne-Marie Miley are both sisters of Lund. They were shocked to just recently hear their sister was found. Lund was connected to a nearly 30-year-old cold case. On January 27, 1993, a woman's head was found along the side of a road in Wayne Fitzgerald State Park in Illinois. Back then, the investigation led to reconstructions of the woman's face, but never did the investigation lead to Lund's family. Then, in 2021, researchers began testing DNA evidence from the case again.
When they did her DNA, it matched highly with one of my cousins on my dad's side. That's how it led to us eventually.
A huge shock to the family, but also relief, especially for Lund's kids, who never knew what happened to their mother. Police in Clarksville stopped looking for her shortly after her disappearance. They said they believe she ran off to Alabama.
They feel better knowing now that their mother didn't abandon them and that she was taken. I think that's easier than just thinking they've been abandoned all these years.
The situation has caused so many emotions for the family, knowing the situation around Lund's death was so terrible. Reyes and Miley say they're so grateful to the people who took this on.
All the hours and time and money they spent giving my sister a name, bringing her back to us. It's remarkable. I can't thank them enough. My family can't thank them enough.
All right, folks, your opportunity to help. It goes back 30 years, but maybe someone said something. They always do. What happened to Susan Lund? 618-244-8004. That's the Jefferson County, Illinois Sheriff's Office. That's where she was found. Or you can call the Clarksville, Tennessee Police Department at 931-648-0656. Please, if you have information, make the call now, and let's get the final answer as to what happened to Susan Lund. Still with me tonight, private investigator, former police officer Rob Joseph, retired director of the San Diego Police Department Crime Lab, Jennifer Shen, and joining us now out of Nashville, Tennessee, reporter with our great affiliate WTVF, Kyle Horan is with us. And joining us by phone in Clarksville, Tennessee is Detective Bruce Kilby with the Clarksville Police Department. Welcome to everyone. Kyle, I want to begin with you. For the family, this has to be unbelievable news on the one hand, but on the other hand, there's still the question, what happened and who was responsible?
Yeah, for them it was unbelievable news. And they told me that they just couldn't believe it and that it was bittersweet, but they were ultimately just happy to hear that there was some type of conclusion here. They spent 30 years believing that maybe Susan Lund had ran off, maybe that she left that night, Christmas Eve, and that she never returned. And just to hear that she was found, even though the conditions around that are terrible, were just something that gave them a little bit of closure. But I've also been told that this has reignited the investigation, and that is something that they're hopeful for, although it is something that they did not want to talk about at the time of our interview.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that investigation. Detective Bruce Kilby with us by phone from the Clarksville Police Department in Tennessee. Detective, what does this development do to this 30-year-old investigation, and what are some of the things that you're looking at right now?
So essentially, it closes out the missing person aspect, which we are responsible for. The main thing now is focusing on who may have seen something back then in 1992, early 93, and hopefully getting those people to come forward and with any information they might have.
And I guess, what are the challenges there? Because again, it's 30 years ago. Is it a small enough town that a lot of folks and family have kind of stayed around for the past few decades, so you might be able to track down some of the people who were there back then?
Well, no. It's actually a military town, which lends its own difficulties. A lot of people tend to move out and settle in other areas. Another big hurdle is that now we're operating across two separate jurisdictions. With the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, they'll take, lead on the homicide investigation portion of it. And our position really is to just try and find as much information as possible.
Jennifer Shen, former director of the crime lab in San Diego, she went missing on Christmas Eve, but the skull was actually recovered about a month later. So what are your thoughts about the possibility of any sort of forensic evidence that could have been recovered with her skull?
Well, I mean, here's why we re-examine cases every 5-10 years or so, because as technology improves, we can do more and more. And forensic genealogy is such an amazing tool. You take a little piece of DNA and put it into a database with over 1 million profiles, and you can find up to third cousins of victims. And so it's just incredible they were able to do this. It's a lot of work. As far as the skull goes, I mean, unless there was some sort of injury to the skull, I don't know how helpful that's going to be in determining cause of death. And because only the skull was recovered, there's not going to be likely any trace evidence or anything that will link that skull to a perpetrator. So it's unfortunate. It's not going to be very useful, although the DNA certainly was extraordinary in this case because they were able to put a name to these remains. And that's, that's just incredible and priceless, I think.
You know what else is incredible is what we're looking at here. That was what they thought she looked like based upon recovering that skull. Detective, let me ask you, you go back to 1992, and this skull is found a month after someone goes missing out of, Clarksville, Tennessee. What was it? Have you spoken to anyone? I don't know if you were working. You look kind of young. I don't think you were working back then, but any idea of the level of communication that existed back then, interstate?
So the internet wasn't a big thing back then. We rely on that pretty heavily to share information from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So it was sparse.
Because you look at that picture and you're like, wow, they got it pretty close. They actually got the hairstyle was similar. I don't know how you get that from the skull. Rob Joseph, let me ask you, where would you go with this investigation? You've got two places. As the detective told us, it was a military town. This is going to be tough.
Yeah, it is a bit of an investigative nightmare. You're going to have to be looking for similar cases, disappearances, and maybe the possibility of finding a severed head. But like the detective said, in these military towns, they're just all over the world, and it's virtually impossible to track those individuals that might have information. And looking for similar cases, similar circumstances might lead you in a direction. And of course, we don't know the state of the skull, and police are not going to tell us anything specific about that, as not to give away information that could, be beneficial to their case or not hurt their case.
Kyle Harmon, one final question for you. In your conversations with the family, did they mention that there was any connection? And it may just be that she could have been abducted and taken there, but did she have any connection to Illinois, Jefferson County at all?
No, they didn't mention anything like that, and I think they were surprised, and they clearly weren't connected to the crime even back then. So there may be of no way they would have known what would have happened to her. And they probably didn't know that anything was even found in Illinois at that time. For all they knew, and what they were told by Clarksville police just in July, later that same year that she went missing, that she may have ran off. In fact, I have an old script that we have that says, they said that there was an 80% chance that there was no foul play. This is something that they had no idea that this may have existed.
Wow.
And she was only known as Ina Jane Doe, as it shows right there. And so this connection 30 years later really caught them off guard. And in fact, they told me that they didn't even know this was a year-long investigation that they were doing just on this DNA from this case, right? Reopening that cold case. And because of them reopening it, they were doing DNA testing, which connected them to the cousin on the father's side from Pam, is what you heard her say in the story. And they didn't know that until 3 weeks before they made the announcement. So even though this case was reopened, they had no clue, right, until the DNA connection was made. So that's just something interesting about the case, that that they are still hopeful, even though, you know, there's some skepticism that may go anywhere, and they wouldn't discuss it. So.
Kyle Horwin, some great reporting from WTVF in Nashville. Thank you so much. Detective Bruce Kilby, appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and we thank you. Rob, Joseph, Jen Shen, always a pleasure. Still ahead. In Los Angeles, California, officers tried to subdue a suspect with less than lethal force. But when it doesn't work, they use deadly force. We take a look at this tragic video with our own law enforcement experts.
Hey, get your beanbag. Go get your beanbag.
And in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a wild shootout caught on camera. We break down what happened during crime time.
real deal at drive10.com.
It is crime time here on Closing Arguments. Let's bring in tonight's guests. Joining me, former New York City Assistant Commissioner and former NYPD Sergeant Special Assignment, Dr. Keith Taylor. Keith served for 26 years as a public safety professional. He has supervised internal affairs, missing persons, emergency service unit, and Federal Emergency Management Agency urban search and rescue teams. And he is an adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Law, Police, Science, and Criminal Justice Administration at John Jay College. Also with us, former gang homicide detective Donald Schweitzer. Donald was a police officer for 10 years. He's investigated gang homicides as a detective, served as a member of the SWAT unit, and worked various narcotics assignments, and has now joined me in my former profession as a lawyer. All right. Great to have you both here. We're going to begin in Los Angeles with the LAPD. Officers escalate force from beanbags to bullets.
LA City 911, operator 850.
Hello, I need help.
Okay, do you need police or paramedics from the fire department?
All right, stepson is with knife and he said he's trying to kill everybody here at home.
Hey, come over here, all of you, everybody.
My wife is still...
Right, let me get you over here. Where's your wife?
Inside the room, he messed up.
Okay, go over here.
Can't lock it anymore.
Go over here. Can she get out?
Yeah, I can get her through the window.
Wait, yeah, get her out through the window. Go over here. Go over here, guys. Yeah, get her out. Get her out.
Everybody.
Get her out. Get the wife out. Get the wife out. Get the wife out. Get her out. Get her out.
Is anyone else in there? No, it's just him.
Is he in there?
Yeah, he's in there.
Wait. Hey, heads up. Is he in here? Is he in this room?
No. He's in one of the bedrooms.
Oh, he's right there. You guys get that. You guys stay here, okay?
Yeah.
Hey, get your beanbag. Go get your beanbag. Okay. Okay, you got beanbag. You got DCO. Watch that right there.
Hey, Jonathan, it's the LAPD, man. I need you to come out, all right? We want to help you. How can we help you today? Can you drop those knives for me, please?
Yeah.
Were you able to verify with Barbara and TK that everybody's out?
We got everybody out.
What's that?
Yeah. So, hey guys, as a matter of fact, let's redeploy. Let's start holding all the four. Okay, start giving him commands if he comes out.
All right, man, come out with your hands up, man. You're gonna come out. Don't fight me. Fight the guys.
Hey guys, we're gonna surround the house, okay? He's inside by himself. So let's just start covering all the doors and windows, all right?
He's walking back inside now. Rear doors.
Hey, two knives. Yes, two knives. Jonathan, check it out, man. I'm not trying to hurt you.
Okay, right there, man.
But look, I'm not gonna go anywhere.
Jonathan, come back to the window, talk to me. Right there, ma'am. You got that for the frontal?
We don't want you to get hurt.
Going towards the front. Go towards the front.
Jonathan.
Left side. Stand towards you guys, right?
Hey, okay. Do not move.
All right, I have a couple of questions here. It begins with how many types of less lethal force do officers have? What sort of options do they have? And your thoughts about the approach to this entire situation. Dr. Keith Taylor.
Sure. There are a number of different less than lethal options that officers have. Chemical munitions such as tear gas and OC spray are some of the common ones. You also have impact munitions such as the beanbag or rubber bullets that are commonly used, not just for individual situations, but things like riot control. And you have, of course, electrical devices such as a taser or stun gun. Those are the basic types of less than lethal options that officers most likely have. But in situations where you have someone charging at you with a knife, having a cover officer that can provide additional support for the officers that are trying to use the less than lethal munitions is important to consider. And I was glad to see how well this unit did in terms of identifying incident commander, designating the officers to do the various tasks, and covering various aspects of the building itself. So the training and the equipment really shows in terms of what these officers, what this department did.
Yeah, Donald Schweitzer, that's one thing that really struck me. It seemed like it was obvious someone was in charge, and they had a plan here.
Yeah, Vinnie, when I looked at this video, I was first touched by what these officers were encountering. They heard that there was a guy in the house with knives in both hands, and he was trying to kill everybody in the house. That's what they knew when they rolled up. Now, they get to the house, and they had the ability of going in, but they chose to do something really smart. They backed off, set a perimeter, and they had their beanbag gun ready to go. There are a lot of different types of force, but the question always is when does deadly force need to take place? In this case, the guy comes out of the house, he's crazed, he's drunk, they shoot him with a beanbag 3 times, it's ineffective, and then he's up on him like with lightning speed. He's about to stab somebody, and that's when they shot him. This was the case where they used every opportunity not to use it, and the leadership and the command here was excellent.
All right, Donald Schweitzer, Dr. Keith Taylor staying with us. When we come back, we've got more crime time, including a drive-by shooting that turns into a head-on collision. You've never seen anything like this. Next.
Visit goodtogo.com.
Welcome back to our Crime Time segment. Still with us, Dr. Keith Taylor and Donald Schweitzer. Next story comes to us from our affiliate WTMJ in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A drive-by shooting turns into a head-on collision.
Guns! Call the cops right now!
It sounded like a bomb exploded close to my house.
How do you feel right now?
Shaken up to no end. I'm still shaking from last night. I couldn't sleep last night.
All right. I haven't, but I wonder if our guests have ever seen anything quite like this. Donald Schweitzer, former gang homicide detective. We've got a shootout, and it's like the game of chicken, and then there's a crash.
Vinnie, this type of thing happens more often than most people realize. I've investigated many situations where you have multiple gang members going out to the OK Corral, so to speak, and shooting them up, either in cars or at a local park. And usually what happens is there's dead bodies on both sides, and usually there's innocent people, like little kids in a playground or people sitting in their living rooms getting shot at. This is a horrible situation, and the fact that people somehow think that gang violence is fun. You just look at this clip right here, and you realize like the lady that was interviewed and other people on the street could have been hurt. They're lucky that they weren't hit.
Dr. Keith Taylor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if both parties are dead set to obliterate each other, they'll do it by ramming, they'll do it by running each other over, and hitting the cars together would be consistent with that goal. The problem is the rest of the communities that are put at risk of serious physical injury or death as collateral damage. So that is a serious issue that every community has to really be aware of and address.
Final story tonight comes to us from Flagler County. The sheriff down there, a stolen car thief is spotted and arrested.
Good hit. All right, we got northbound, right lane. Come on. Everybody get on the left. Lift up your shirt collar, exposing your waistline. Do it now. Very slowly, spin around in the circle. Slowly. Hey, we can't figure it out. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. All right, stop. Occupants of the vehicle, hands up. wrong, man? What the
Okay, you know, you see all the officers, you see all the cars, and you're wondering how dangerous is a stolen car stop? Dr. Keith Taylor.
Car stops, whether stolen or not, are dangerous. Making it a stolen car stop certainly really takes away any kind of idea that it could end up being a normal type of situation. I really like that the officers slowed the job down. They were able to get the cooperation of this individual, and it did not end up with loss of life. Not every person that is pulled over in a stolen car reacts in such the same way. The fact that they're in a stolen car lends one to believe that they will be less than likely to cooperate with police when they are stopped.
Donald Schweitzer, we look at a lot of videos here, often the ones that end up making the news and bubbling up. There's something dramatic that happens. This is dramatic, but everything goes as it's supposed to.
Picture perfect police work. The way they pulled this truck over and then they brought that guy back was wonderful. Vinnie, there's nothing like capturing a guy that's in a stolen car. And there's some officers that just have a knack for seeing them. We had people on our force that just had this sixth sense. Other people might drive right by them, but there's some officers that spot them. In this case, they got their guy.
What do you mean when they just spot them? Like they have a sense that this car might be stolen, you run the plates, and then it comes back and you kind of know?
Yeah, there's these bolos that are out there, and some officers just have them in their head that those license plate numbers, they know what to look for. They know how people act. I was not one of them, but I was passenger in many of chases after those cars.
That's fascinating. Well, always great to have you both here, Dr. Keith Taylor, Donald Schweitzer. This is why we do it, folks. We show you all extremes of what happens in the world of policing, and we have great experts with lots of experience to help us understand it and see it a lot better. So thanks so much, guys. We'll see you again really, really soon.
Thank you.
All right, folks, when we come back, our work is not done tonight like we do every night. There is a child out there who is missing, someone who should be home. We're going to show you their face and ask for your help.